Hello, everyone. Welcome back once again to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. I appreciate you taking the time out of your week to have a listen to the podcast that we have going on here. Before I get into the subject for this week, as always, I'd like to ask you a massive favor. Please make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That way you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. I endeavor to do this once a week and drop the episodes on a Saturday morning, but you will get a notification as soon as it is published. And also by subscribing, you can help me continue to grow this podcast and get it out to more people. If you could also just follow along on the social media platforms, the Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook and at the Unstoppable Dad on Instagram. That way you can stay up to date with everything we have going on within our program and also any other free resources that I might be putting out there. One of my goals and my mission with this podcast is to give you some resources and to give you a heap of usable information that you don't have to pay for. It is free content. I released a free 8-week program not that long ago, gym program for beginners, where if that is something that is high on your priority list that you feel like you need to do, you can literally jump in there. Don't have to invest any money. Follow along with the videos that I've put into the Facebook group, which is linked to the Facebook page, and get a good solid base for your training for 8 weeks. I also do a paid program. So if you'd like to talk to me about that, there is some links in the show notes where you can book in a call, or you can just click around on the social medias and see what we've got coming up. I will be releasing a new program in the next couple of weeks, which will be our 30 Days to Unstoppable program. So stay tuned for more info on that. It will only be a limited number of spots because I want to make sure that the coaching within that program is of the highest quality. Anyway, on to the topic for the week. So the topic for the week is, what is more important, sleep or training? Now, I am not talking about absolutes here. I am not talking about you either sleep or train and that's it. What I'm more referring to in the context of, and this is something that comes up a lot with people that I work with, and it's the scenario of, I have the opportunity in the morning to either take more sleep or do my training session. Because for a lot of dads, for a lot of parents that I work with, that time in the morning is the best time for them to get their training session in, whether they go to the gym, whether they do it at home. Doing it early in the morning before they wake up or before they go to work is generally the best opportunity for them to do it. Now, that's not a blanket statement for everybody. Obviously, everybody has a slightly different set of context based off what their profession is, what their work hours are, what their family life is like. So it is going to be different for everybody. I'm just talking about this particular scenario. And it's not just this particular scenario where it might be foregoing an extra hour of sleep in the morning or an extra hour and a half of sleep in the morning to go do your training session. It may also be on the other side of the schedule where you're going to bed later in order to do a training session later at night. Because without going down the rabbit hole too much, if you do a training session at night, your body is going to need time to wind down after doing something which is eliciting a stress response from you. So if you are the type of person that trains like 5:30, 6:30 at night, there's probably a better than average chance that you're not going to be able to get to sleep till 2, maybe 3, or even 4 hours after you've finished that activity. Because at the end of the day, within a training session, what we are doing is we are putting our body under stress. And in order to get to a calmed state where we can start to go through the process of working into sleep and our sleep cycles, our body needs to downregulate and it needs to get to a point where we can actually do that. So if you're training at night, you may not be able to get to sleep till later on in the night. Therefore, the question could be, do I forego getting to bed earlier in order to do a session at night? Or, as I said, the most probably the more common one that I come across is, am I going to forego that extra hour or 2 hours of sleep in the morning in order to do my training session? Now, it really depends. It depends on context. Now, those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while are obviously probably sick of me saying it always depends. Well, it does always depend, because there is not a one size fits all answer for this, right? If I was to draw a line in the sand and you are on the point where you are completely sleep deprived. The kids have been up all night, whether they've been sick or you've got a newborn baby, and you are just not getting a great quality of sleep or a solid like 6 to 8 hours, then I would probably say sleep is more important if I was to give you an absolute answer. I think sleep is probably one of the most important things you can do for your overall health and well-being. And coming from somebody who writes training programs for people for a living and has done for a decade plus, that might be something that is surprising for you to hear, but it is just the way it is. There is a lot more information coming out now that is pointing to the fact that sleep for a lot of people is the low-hanging fruit that needs to be addressed or needs to be taken in order for them to move the needle closer to a lot of their overall health and well-being goals. As a general rule of thumb, aiming for that 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night is generally what we're looking for. Now, again, needs to be context dependent. I am just talking in very broad and general terms, but aiming for that 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night, and not just aiming for that, but trying to get good quality sleep. Now, as a parent, that can be near on impossible, especially if you have a newborn, you have a sick kid. For us right now, we're going through a period where our son's been sick for the last couple of days at the time that I record this. So like our quality of sleep hasn't been great throughout the night. And I have done a podcast on sleep previously. I think it was quite a while ago now. And one of the tips that I've given out for new parents, and I give this out all the time, is what you want to try and do is you want to try and bookend your night. And what I mean by that is if you are aiming to get, say, 8 hours of sleep, for me, what that looks like is I'm going to try and be in bed by 9 because I generally want to wake up by 5, sometimes a little bit earlier. So if I'm in bed by 9, or I'm like ready to go to sleep at 9, I don't mean going into bed and then looking at my phone for an hour and then actually getting into sleep or starting to prep to go to sleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And there's a whole other conversation that probably needs to be had about looking through your phone in bed and sleep hygiene and things like that. But I'll probably redo that episode and save that for a different episode. But by bookending your night and making that concerted effort to, I'm going to go to sleep at 9 and then I'm going to wake up at 5. And then whatever happens between those bookends or between that time, there's going to be a lot of stuff as a parent, especially a new parent, that is going to be outside of your control that may affect the quality of sleep that happens. But at least you're making that effort to try and get that. Now, it also means that if you're doing that and you're consistently trying to do that when it is within your circle of control to do so, that if everything goes well through the night, kids sleep through, no sick kids, nothing comes up, it means that you should be able to get a good, solid quality 6 to 8 hours of sleep during those times because your body's used to going to bed at the same time and then waking at the same time. So that's like the first thing that needs to be addressed, is trying to make sure that you are looking at getting that amount of time. Now, out of the point of trying to substitute sleep in the morning for a training session instead, should you or shouldn't you do it? Well, let's say, for example, let's use a hypothetical situation where, let's say, for example, you've been up most of the night because the babies need to be fed, the kids have been sick, whatever the case might be. And then the alarm goes off at 5 for you to go and do your training session, and you feel like you can get an extra hour of sleep, and you've only really got a cumulative total of maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep for the night, then maybe it is going to be a better option for you to get an extra hour of sleep. Maybe it is going to be a better option for you to, set the alarm for an extra hour and try and get that to hold you in better stead for later on in the day. Now, the other side of things is, for me, if I get into the habit of waking up at 5 and then the alarm goes off, even if I haven't gotten great sleep, I generally won't be able to get back to sleep. That's just me personally. Everyone's different, but that's just me personally. So it's going to be very contextual. I think that if I had to say what's more important, I do actually think sleep's more important. So I think prioritizing that sleep is more important. Now, that doesn't mean you should forego training completely. And if you are struggling to get a good amount of sleep, should your training be adjusted? The short answer is yes. If it is a long-term thing where you're chronically not able to get good quality of sleep, there's a few things that you probably need to look at addressing. Number one, what's your sleep hygiene like? And I will do another episode on that again. I have done one previously, but we're looking at things like I just said, having a very having a structured bedtime around when you go to bed and when you wake up, trying to forego things like uh, electronic devices, blue light before we go to bed, all these, blackening out the room temperature, like all these things will affect our sleep hygiene and our quality of sleep. And if we've got all those ducks in a row, and then we are doing those things and we are making sure we're doing that concerted effort to get sleep between those hours, then whatever happens within those hours around the kids and around other things can be outside of our control. But if we're doing those right things, it means that when we have the opportunity to get good quality sleep, we will get it. And so are we doing that? That's like the first thing. What's your sleep hygiene like? Are we making that effort? And then if we're not getting sleep and it's becoming a chronic thing due to kids being consistently sick, especially if they start daycare, they'll bring everything home. They'll be sick every second week until their immune system builds up. And then we're not getting the sleep, you will probably need to look at adjusting your training. And some rules that when I'm coaching people that I live by, I shouldn't say live by, I coach by when it comes to training, and I do this with my training, is there's a few things that you probably want to look at. You'll probably want to avoid a whole bunch of excess volume, because sleep is one of the key components to recovery. And if you are under recovering, so you are under sleeping, if you load yourself up with too much training volume, you are going to dig yourself into a physical hole that you're unable to get out of. And that's potentially going to manifest itself into you getting sick, you getting injured, or a whole multitude of things that could come off that. So you want to make sure that you are probably avoiding any excess volume, and then being mindful of the intensity. Going and doing a 1 RM when you're sleep deprived is probably not the smartest thing. Potentially even going and lifting super, super, super heavy could be ill-advised for you in your particular circumstances. Now, obviously, this is always going to tie back into your particular set of goals and your particular set of circumstances, because if you are a professional athlete, then it's a completely different story. That still doesn't mean your plan is going to be doesn't need to be adaptable. However, the outcome that you're trying to get from training is different. Now, if you're just a dad who's looking to maintain a good base level of health and athleticism, then it might mean that if you're going through a period where you're, for the most part, sleep deprived, you need to just dial back the volume and intensity on your training. So that might look like, instead of doing 3 sessions a week, maybe doing 2. Or instead of doing 4, maybe doing 3. It may look like, instead of doing 4 strength sessions, maybe you do 2 strength sessions, and then you just do 2 monostructural cardio sessions where you're doing like 20 minutes on the rower, you're doing 30 minutes on a bike, or you're doing just a walk instead, to try and keep the body moving, but you're not doing something that is going to drive or where you're going to require a high level of recovery. Because when you require a high level of recovery and the amount of sleep that you're getting, or the quality of sleep that you're getting, is not there is no amount of training or mobility or anything you can do that is going to make it any better. All that you are going to do by piling on more volume, piling on more intensity, is just dig yourself a bigger hole that may lead to some issues immediately or later on down the line. So while I've jumped around a little bit on this particular topic, let me try and bring it all back and bring it down to some usable bits of information. So the question that I posed is, what's more important, sleep or training? And I said that context it depends on context, and it does. But as a rule of thumb, if you're not getting your quality 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, sleep is probably more important. If you are getting your quality 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night, or it's a one-off thing, then it really depends on you and your particular set of goals, but you could probably do the training session instead. From the point of view of what you need to look at from a sleep point of view, the big thing that I would do as a parent, and I recommend to parents, is try and bookend your night. So try and have a set bedtime and a set wake up time for yourself. And you want to aim for that to be 6 to 8 hours apart. There's going to be things that will happen within that 6 to 8 hours where that may be outside of your control, whether the kids wake up, they need to be fed, they're sick, whatever the case might be. But by bookending that night, it will mean that when you have the opportunity to get that sleep, you will be able to maximize it and get a good quality of sleep. If you are sleep deprived and there are a lot of things happening that are outside of your control, and sometimes in life that is just part and parcel of it, then sometimes you may need to forego training in order to catch up on sleep, because sleep for mine is one of the most important things when it comes to your physical well-being, when it comes to your mental well-being, your gut health. And there is a lot of information and studies that are coming out right now that are showing us how important sleep is and how detrimental lack of sleep can be. So by training more when you are sleep deprived, you can potentially dig yourself into a hole. If you are going through a period where you are heavily sleep deprived, then it may be worth looking at adjusting your training, looking at the overall volume that you're doing, looking at the intensity of your program. And I'm not talking about the intensity or the application within the sessions that you're doing. I'm talking about the overall intensity of your program around, what's the outcome of it, and sets and reps and RMs and things like that. Adjusting that when you're sleep deprived can keep you consistent with your training. And then it means when you come out the other side of the period that you're in, as the kids start to get older or they start to get into a better sleep schedule, you can then start to ramp those things back up, and you're coming at it from a higher base level, meaning that you are going to be able to grow quicker on the back end of it. But if you keep trying to push the volume and intensity in a sleep deprived state, you may land yourself in trouble through injuries, through sickness, or through potentially long-term a long-term detrimental state to your overall health. So big thing is, I do feel that sleep is probably more important for training, especially if you are not getting enough sleep. But if you are sacrificing the training program in the morning because you have poor sleep hygiene or poor sleep habits, then maybe look at that first, and then you can start to look at adding in the training program. And if you have that ticked off and you are still not getting enough sleep, then it maybe look at adjusting your training program. If you need help with that, please reach out. As I said at the top of the show, I have a link in the show notes where you can book in a time to have a chat with me. I'm more than happy just to jump on a 15-minute call with anybody who even has an existing program who may need help adapting that to their particular set of circumstances. The good thing about the experience that I have over 10 years plus of running a gym with parents and people from all walks of life is one of the best things I am able to do for people is help them build out an adaptable plan. So if you need help with it, reach out. There is a link in the show notes for you to book in. I appreciate you listening. Hopefully that is of some value to you all. Let me know if there's any questions that stem from the topic. Even though it seems like a really simple thing to cover off, it is actually quite a broad topic. So I'm probably going to do another episode where I'll deep dive into kind of sleep hygiene and some sleep tips. But bottom line is, for me, if I had to make an absolute statement, if you're not getting a good quality of sleep or a good amount of sleep, then sleep's probably more important than training. And if you need to change your sleep habits, then it's probably the first thing that you need to look at. But there will be things outside of your control as a dad, as a parent, that we've just got to roll with the punches sometimes. So have a great week. Thanks for listening again. I'll talk to you soon.